nice to see you. How
It's
are
just
things?
gonna be me today because Kyle had to do something. So,
Aw,
but he says hi,
okay.
and he's so happy that you're also here. So he's sorry that he's not around.
That's okay.
But yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay, it's a little weird thanks to the pandemic, and I now have a 2-year-old, so it's been a while since
Yeah,
we've seen each other, and that has created a lot of fun and a lot of other life existential anxieties. But, we're just doing our best.
kids will do that.
Yeah, yeah.
But it seems like you all have like such a blast. I know that like the filter of the internet can be, not always like the best depiction of someone's actual life. But what I get to see seems really fun. And I'm also very jealous of your kids' toys.
I mean, it's been a nice excuse for us to indulge in our own childhoods, prolonged childhoods. So it's great. There
I agree.
there's a lot of fun to be had, and it's all about kind of the little things at the moment, whether or not you do or you don't have a little person in your life, because that's kind of how things have been. We've all slowed down in so many ways. So yeah, just about observing the minutia of daily life.
Yeah. Like participating in like maybe a bit of a different way, which I'm actually really enjoying.
Yeah, totally. Have you
Yeah, I
found
think
that you're working on like things that you didn't expect to be working on, or?
100%.
Hmm.
Yeah. We had like a lot of really interesting projects lined up for this year. And some I am like genuinely really very sad that we didn't get to do them.
Hmm.
Um, and some super exciting people coming to stay with us that I was like thrilled to meet. Um, but yeah, I think it's just like reminding myself that like this is a moment, and there's other things that are happening in this moment that I can celebrate, and the things that would have happened hopefully will happen in another moment.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just a
So,
weird pivot because like so much of what we do like exists in these sort of social spheres. I mean, the nature of a residency, um,
yeah.
especially inviting someone to your home, like it involves a lot.
Yeah, it is incredibly social.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's changed a lot, and we are working on things that we didn't expect to work on, but yeah, it's good things. It's just like trying to kind of come to grips with like what that means. And I'm sure like you can really relate to that in a lot of ways because I'm sure you've seen projects shift and change and get postponed and moved and all sorts of things too.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, for us, I think like so. If you don't know, I am also with a partner who's an artist, and for the both of us, um,
Yeah, maybe I'll let you introduce yourself, Winnie,
oh
and then
yeah, sure. However
yeah.
you do this, yeah.
Yeah, so it is like really informal.
I'm just talking to you, Chrissy. It's all
Yeah.
good. And hello.
Um, but yeah, if you want to like just introduce yourself, introduce your practice, and like yeah, we just sort of like it's a pretty casual chat, but then like the formality. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I'm an artist based in Toronto, and I mean, I could just, let me introduce my artwork, I guess. That's probably
Yeah,
the
do it.
most visual way to do it. Um, for the last, like, sort of decade, I've been working on these colored pencil drawings that kind of focus on portrait and the female form and hair as this sort of extrapolation of just so many parts of our identity, whether it's like these societal sort of readings on beauty and gender, etc., to I guess just like the individual personality, etc. It's just really evolved over the years, and this is sort of in the middle of all that. I feel like this is from I really don't know how long ago. This is the only piece I have at home of my own
Really?
work. Yeah, it's a piece I got back, and I kind of fell in love with it again, living in a condo, and it's just such a green piece, and it was at the cusp of when I was sort of melding these more figurative works with I guess, like more identities from nature,
Mhm.
more integrating the botanical elements as you see kind of meandering with the
Yeah.
hair. Um, so it's hanging just above our bedroom office right now next to a giant fern. And so it just really felt like a
Is
part of this part of our lives right now. Um, but yeah, so this is kind of indicative of the kind of work I've done for a long time with colored pencils on paper. But I mean, feel free to interrupt if you have any questions. Uh,
Yeah, I think that like when you were here, we did talk a lot about the hair, which I saw
mhm.
a question about that. Um, and I thought your perspective on it was really interesting because like for me, because like I just love like texture and color and the like integration of those two elements into art. So I was really drawn to your work because I saw your work before I knew who you were. And it was like a really large piece, and I think it was at the AGO actually. It was
Mhm.
like a large pencil drawing of like a portrait. So it was
Yeah.
a much older piece. And and I like I think I fell in love with like the patience and the like repetitive sort of meditative quality of like doing that kind of action so consistently and intentionally and with so much like care and love. So I like that was like the angle I took with it. And seeing you actually like work in practice too, it's like there's just like a lot of like dedication and yeah, like just really immense care and beauty that you as a person bring into the work.
Aw.
Um,
I mean, that's kind of one of the core parts of the work for me, and is in terms of the, I don't want to say performance or just the physicality of it. It is this very
mhm.
meditative, like gestural thing, especially with the large scale work. Like for me, like I think I've talked about this many times in the past, especially with the works that are about hair. Sort of every stroke of the colored pencil is this sort of equals a strand of hair. So it's this really labored compounding of line to create the density of these sort of creatures and environments that I've conjured throughout the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's always been such a, I kind of see it as how people view yoga. Not that I have done that much yoga in my life, but it is this really centering process, and you kind of just zone out, listen to my podcast, and it becomes this really direct and intimate relationship with the paper and the image before you, and you kind of go in and out of awareness with it, and
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing when I'm working that large, because there's also a time scale to it too. Like some of those pieces take like about a month to do, kind of full time. So it is this really immersive um, venture.
The pieces that you've been working on now, like the one image that I shared of you in that space that was for a residency,
Hmm.
um, that are like, I guess feel like a little more delicate, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word, but like fragile and like precious in their scale. And like they're so cut out. But they weren't like locked in a frame like some of the other cutout pieces that you've worked on. Uh, I'm like, I know that like technically we don't always like go on about like, I just like, I really liked that image and I wanted to know if like you could like just talk about that a little bit because I'm very
Yeah.
curious.
Like the paper cut stuff I started doing kind of as a result of doing residencies. So I think as in 2016, I got the residency to do the Doris McCarthy Fool's Paradise, and that was right on the bluffs. It was the artist Doris McCarthy's home in her studio that she endowed to the Ontario Heritage Trust, and they're still doing yearly sort of invitations for artists to apply and stay there. So I was there in January and February. Actually went into it thinking I was going to do these sort of paper sculptures of the figures that were in my work. And as I was developing that, they became more these relief sculptures and paper cutout.
Mm,
So, and part of that adaptation in the work, which is unexpected, is that I was able to travel with all these flat colored pieces of paper and not have large scale stuff with all the chalks and all the colored pencils. I mean, that's kind of still stayed the same, but just not working at a huge scale and having these sort of modular pieces. So I was really inspired by the surroundings right by the ravine and the trail, the Doris McCarthy Trail towards the bluff. It was this sort of winter version of nature. There were just a lot of silhouettes of sort of dried botanicals around that I was really attracted to. So I was recreating those in paper, but then they would just be laid out piece by piece in the studio. And I just had so much freedom and fun arranging them and rearranging them. So it was a bit of a departure from kind of working from point A to point B on a large scale, but
Yeah.
like the underlying part of it is it's still this very like meticulous like cutting and drawing, and then I kind of draw and ply these pieces and fold them at the same time, so a lot of them are actually drawn on both sides. And yeah, I've done a few residencies since then sort of abroad, and it's become this sort of kit that I'm able to travel with, like essentially a 20 by 30 sheet of colored paper, like a bunch of them can be rolled up into a tube, and that's goes
That's
on the
perfect.
plane, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, people cart materials to a residency and be very aware, like the actual challenge of that.
absolutely.
The, I guess like just some of these questions, like you mentioned that you listen to podcasts. I guess like if you feel like it, you could give a podcast shout out. And also like the question about the animation being like, did that come out of like learning like a computer skill somewhere and then it sort of transitioned as like a usable thing in your work, or did you have the idea of wanting to do that and then you have a super fan
I love
and
it.
and then you needed to learn something to apply the interest in that exploration?
It really, the my interest in animation came from how the paper cuts were really developing. So again, like going back to that wall installation, I essentially sort of recreated this garden from memory from my time exploring like the Swedish seaside. So that was where I was last year on an island called Gotland, Sweden, at the Brusbo Arts Residency. It's like unfathomable during the pandemic that that was a thing we were lucky enough to do. Like I brought my family with me, and our
Oh,
baby turned 1 there, so like so much has changed in exactly a year. It's absolutely crazy. So yeah, so I had all these different plants as you saw in the image, and they essentially just kind of packed down again into a box, and they come back with me. So that wall installation is something I also brought to a show that I was working on um, at Saw Gallery in Ottawa that winter.
oh,
So
okay.
yeah, it was something that was expanded upon, and again, like for the nature of those, like an ephemeral wall installation, there's so much there's so much potential in terms of how it can be moved and sort of placed again in a different context, that it's a again it's like very different from my previous work. Um, but bring me back to what we were talking about. Oh, the animations. Yeah, so like the adaptations of those works just keep it's like tenfold, right? So when
I
I'm
love
sorry,
I love that.
I mean, it surprises me. It's great to be as an artist to have, whether it's like material inspiration or different thematic things that you want to jump upon. For me, it was gaining all this new knowledge and ways to sort of portray the narratives and the visions that I had beyond like the static paper plane. And so that's what it's been for the last couple of years. So yeah, like with the bodies that I was making in cut paper, like I was creating the limbs sort of individually. And as you're playing with them to create compositions, you're just kind of like tweaking and articulating them ever so slightly. And I'm creating them with joints. And that was just a natural inclination for me to draw them. I'm like, oh yeah, this is like essentially stop motion animation.
Yeah.
Um, so like I learned how to do string them up and scan them digitally. and use After Effects on my own. Like that's something I researched, and knowing how to do that, I actually applied to learn like more traditional techniques with the Chalmers Arts Fellowship through the Ontario Arts Council. So I spent a year learning that and working at the Toronto Arts Animated Image Society.
That's such a good use of that grant. Like that's such
Totally.
an application. Yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, when you think about it, like those are things that people go to school for. So it's completely bonkers to think, oh, I'm gonna just do this. But thankfully, with the grant, like I really took the year off to focus and work on that. So I was able to work in their studios with the top-down animation setup with like the camera and like the Dragon Frames software. So I've made a few like little looping scenes that I see within the world of a lot of the newer diorama pieces I've been doing. So those are cut paper works that are in their own little contained environments where I paint the frame and diorama is how I describe them. They don't necessarily have the full depth of one, but they're these little aquarium environments, it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are environments.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah. I mean, I think the transition from where you were and what you're doing now is like I can see the progression, but also like independently they're both very interesting for like very different reasons. Like they're so connected. I think like your mark making, your palette, your like use of the tools that you use is like the through line, and like the like the message or the sentiment you're trying to bring forward. But the exploration of those ideas is being showcased in a new way, and I think that it's like really very like powerful for artists to like see someone like take a concept, take an idea, take like a vision that they're really interested in, and like find new paths for discussing it and feeling comfortable in shifting away from something that was like working and very successful at the start of their career, and like still maintain that level of like commitment and support from their community as they like progress into something that's a little bit new.
And I think I'm also a little bullheaded, but I had a lot of support from like gallerists and things that I was working with to sort of explore these different avenues. And I think for the nature of what I do, though, there's such like I guess there are so many key things that really identify them as my work that I also just trusted my own sort of process, that it's not as divergent as I think it is in my head, that everything that I kind of have a hand in, like it will sort of tie into a previous. And now that I'm like a few years out from just starting the paper cuts, I'm like really seeing how a lot of these, like, again, like the really botanical elements, like kind of fusing into the bodies and birthing their own environments, like that is completely at the center of the newer works now. So it's just interesting. You can see how you used your own previous work as your own springboard or inspiration. And I'm always fascinated by other artists who, you know them for one thing, and then they have these other sort of streams. And I'm also really excited because I know the joy that they must feel, like just doing something slightly different than what is expected. So
totally.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. All right, shall we share some arts?
Yeah.
Or would you like me to go first?
Well, I went rogue. Like I chose like specifically not flat works because I'm at home.
Because like most of the work that we have is print based.
Yeah,
because
makes sense.
We have a lot of printmakers here, and we make prints and we can trade prints.
Yeah.
So we don't have a lot of like dimensional art.
Okay.
So that's awesome. I love
I'm like,
that.
is this too like divergent from the title of the series?
One of my friends wrote me like being like, do the files always have to be flat?
Yeah.
Like I got the message and I was like, I don't understand this question. And I was like, oh,
Like, do you
duh.
only mean like print media or no? I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna fully lean into it and let you know that I've chosen exclusively things that I can hold now.
I love it. No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
But I guess maybe I can, I don't know how
Yeah,
you want to do it.
no,
I'll do
go for
the,
it. I love it.
so I have a selection of Ness Lee ceramics that I've both traded and bought throughout the years. And that's just someone who's, I guess, she's just an all-around artist, does public artworks. Who doesn't know Ness Lee?
Yeah.
So, like, I think about her work on these such large scales and her paintings to just her sort of quick little paperworks. And I think the first time I met her was maybe, I want to say it was at a Toronto outdoor art exhibition. And it was at a time where I also didn't have money to like buy something that was like so very affordable. But I guess in the years later, like we've sort of traded a few, and these were parts of a trade that we did. These are little tiger
Cool.
creatures that I really love, and this was also just an excuse to bring out all the ceramic works I have hidden in my apartment because we can't have them out really
Oh,
because we have a 2 year old. So they're like to be enjoyed in a drawer and sort of collected. But yeah, these are
oh,
just
they're
really
so
beautiful.
sad.
So they're kind of here. Let me. This is the stand that I've been using as my good night moon. So they're like relief in
Oh,
that they're
okay.
actually standing. Um, but yeah, this is, I guess it's,
Ceramics are so satisfying.
I don't remember the significance of her tiger themed works, but I always tied it personally into kind of like my own background in the Chinese zodiac and just the ferocity of these, but also the sadness in this creature is something else. Um, but this was one of my Ness Lee purchases from Patel
Oh,
Projects when it was, I want to say her show on Queen Street in 2018, maybe. Maybe I was pregnant
yeah.
at that point, but I can't recall. And I just love, this is more indicative of her body of work. Of course,
I
we,
wanted a piece from that show really
yeah.
bad. Mhm. They're so good.
I mean, they're amazing. And she had them on these sort of solar, um, like, I don't know what they're called, but they just kind of were little display things that spun them around. But
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
yeah, too precarious for my domestic life right now. But I just always loved like how this is just a figurine and an object that isn't meant necessarily to be mounted, and that it has this sort of movement that is just,
Yeah.
it's so sweet and free and vulnerable at the same time. And
Lazy
um
Susan.
yeah, it is a lazy, that's what we need is a lazy Susan someday. But
No, I think like also my dad's a sculptor. And he sculpts marble and it's very like non you can't really touch it. Like if you touch marble too much, it changes its entire color and it like looks
mm,
really weird because of the oils on your skin and the like openness of the stone. And so I really love like sculpture that is meant to be sculpture. Like it's not like a functional sculpture. Um, but that is also like inviting you to hold it and like be with it, not just like observe it. So those
mm-hmm.
are really great for that because it's like they can be observed, but they also are like saying, no, like flip me over, like there's a backside to this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a literal backside.
Yeah, I mean, and there's just something to be said about like also attainable artworks too. Like I
Mm,
think I guess the other works I'm going to show are all in the realm of like not just being like amazing artists that are friends of mine or, just women in Toronto who make. But it's just a way to also collect given whatever space and budgets that we have. And, you know, it's a great starting point.
I love that. Um, okay, so my first share hopefully will be visible. Oh,
Oh yeah.
actually, way more visible than I was
No,
expecting.
it's very
Okay.
good. I can see the
Um,
subtle changes.
So this is a like a monoprint by an artist in Ottawa, Chayle Cook, and she stayed with us. Oh my gosh, many years ago, like when we first started Sparkbox.
Hmm.
She's a jeweler now in Ottawa. Like she has a jewelry shop and she makes really beautiful jewelry that's like sustainable and very like conscious of her materials, where they're sourced, how they're used. And yeah, her work is really great. And but at the time when she came to stay with us, she was working in print. She went to NASCAD.
Mm.
And actually, like thinking back to like when she was with us, jewelry was like such a clear, like she was working with metal, so she was working with copper plates, and she had them cut into all of these different shapes. So like each of these are like individual, like you can kind of see the embossment if I kind of tilt it on its
Yeah, I
side.
can. I can see that little highlight ridge.
So they were all these like hand cut pieces of copper that like if you're not in print, then like the time spent on this can be a bit lost because like you have to file all of these edges very meticulously, especially when they're into these like aggressive points that she has, so that you don't just punch a giant hole in your paper and potentially like all the felts of the etching press.
Yeah.
And so it's like just like a real like labor of love to make something like this. And then she had a really like very intense practice of color mixing and trying to create a palette that was like muted but observed. So it was like about being soft and like gentle, but also like being present on the page, which I really appreciate so much about this piece. And then she essentially would just like assemble these different forms into different compositions on the sheets of paper and print these like kind of isolated one-offs, but always using like the same plates as like I guess like the template for how the forms could be constructed. So they were just like constantly shifted and moved and printed differently to form like different I don't yeah, like it's just shapes forming shapes really.
Hmm.
But yeah, just like a simple, soft and lovely piece and you know, clearly jewelry is a good shift,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think.
like just handling all those individual pieces and preparing them, like there's clearly a love for that labor as well.
Yeah,
There has to
exactly.
be.
But yeah, we've like this has been like a piece in our office forever, like since we got it, which was probably like 2010 or something like that. So like
Wow.
10 years.
Yeah.
Um, and we just weren't really sure if it would like read very well because it is like quite faint. But it's like yeah, it's like working out just fine.
No, it looks good.
Yeah, so that's her for sure. She's like she's also just like a very like super sweet and kind person and even though this is like not indicative of what her work looks like now.
But it's so
Uh,
fascinating to see where
yeah,
people sort of take off on what they want to do or, what they're
exactly.
known for now.
Totally. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's my Chayle Cook.
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Um,
All right.
all
What
right,
do you
my
got?
turn. All right, so number two is kind of twofold. So I guess on the level of sort of collecting affordable works, and I guess ceramic is also just something I'm fascinated with because it's a different way of working with your hands, and I love the I guess the perceived value or preciousness of something that actually has this weight and substance and like, you know, it's a different form of touch where I can feel the evidence of like the artist's making. Um,
Yeah.
it's just something that I'm just constantly drawn to, and maybe that's just like I don't know, a grown up version of collecting figurines and toys and things, which we all did and do. Artwork is a different kind of ephemera. I think, like, I should mention this is Adana. I don't want to say her last name poorly, so I'm gonna. It's,
Welcome to my life.
I know.
I'm regularly like, I like, even with some names that I'm like 100% sure that I'm like, this is how you say their name, and then I'm like, you're gonna say it weird
I'm gonna
when
say
you're
it
all.
poorly. It's a beautiful Dutch last name. Starts with an S, Jilbloom. So I can say the Bloom part, but I can't say the first part, so I'm not gonna butcher it. But this is a beautiful screen print of hers. She does these beautiful oil paintings, but this is a nice thing that we can have at home and is definitely so visually a part of the rest of her work that
Mm.
like it's something we live with all the time. Um, but again, going back to this is Eunice Luk, Luk. So I went to high school with Eunice. We were part of the same arts program. So it was like a rigorous sort of, I guess it's called Arts York, and it kind of puts you through the same foundations as like a first year art school. So there was like drawing and painting and life drawing and photography. Um, but we both also ended up going to OCAD, and years just a few years after OCAD, she actually moved to Japan, and so I've seen her in Japan during our residencies. And she's just someone in the world who does a lot. She also runs Slow Editions, which is she does different collaborations with artists on multiples as well. But this
Okay.
is a little clock series made in ceramic that she's created, and they're all sort of 10 to 2, but within the series, this is number 27 out of 50. They're all in these different oblong shapes, and this is just something we have on the wall in lieu of a real clock that never actually, goes, runs out of batteries or anything. And they're just so
I
like
really
gingerly
respect
written.
the splatter. I don't know enough about ceramics to know like words
I,
for,
I don't know so much either, but
but like however the splatter is created. I don't know if that's called a glaze or if a glaze is what makes it shiny. I
it's
really
either
sorry
glaze or underglaze. I think this is
but I really, and I'm assuming that the clay was actually that color, that like deep
Yes,
red.
so I think that's the clay itself is the sort of terracotta thing that
Yeah.
I'm guessing, because I've done the tiniest bit of ceramics that I have an appreciation for um, people who do this. This is just a slab that you kind of roll out, but then like all this is like hand painted and fired, so it's all permanently on there. But that's something I bought really early on, or I can't remember if I bought or traded, but this is something I bought more recently, is this like set of 3 vessels. I kind of bought it with the idea that it's one for each person in my little family. So there's the
Oh,
long one from Darren. I'm the wide vessel, and Artie, my son, is like the little baby cup.
a little
So
vessel.
this is just something that sits on the mantle, but I mean, they are functional as sort of drinking vessels or ice cream, which I've seen her do.
But
But
they're also very nice as like individual. I like the base.
yeah, I mean, they're all like little hand-built pieces. So I think like that's sort of something that's been very beautiful about her work through the time is
Mhm.
within her like bigger works, she builds like these very sort of kind of graphic looking things like an egg or a snail, and then they're painted in these beautiful gradients, but there's such a tenderness of touch and to something that is so like weighted. And I think the hand built element of it really, you can see the elements of um, the labor in it that I love, that they're
Yeah.
not perfect in that really sort of like manufactured way, but you can see the time spent. And
There
yeah.
was a pot that lived here and she ran classes. I took one with like my mom and a friend of mine.
Yes.
Um and like her kind of like opening to the class, which I also like having run workshops know is like a sort of way of being like, I know that none of you are potters and you are not going to become a ceramicist by the end of this weekend workshop, and that is okay.
Yeah.
But she would say like, perfect pots have no soul. So your the imperfections that go into your work are like expressions of who you are, and you should not feel sorry for them. And
Beautiful.
like I just like, it's such a simple statement, and I also like, I know that like it's a way of being like, please don't freak out during the workshop, because like it's so hard to manage that. But I also like, I'm just like, yeah, I really like that. Like if there's like a weird mark or a funny stretch, or if like my cup forms in a way that like most cups don't, that's okay, and that's like what I'm bringing to the cup game at this particular pottery experience.
I think it's just so funny that it's like that's a medium where it's so great and to see those little elements, but then come like paperwork, so I'm just like, no, I don't want to see this thumbprint or this like dent. It's horrible. So maybe that's like another reason why we're so drawn to it, because I'm looking at the print behind you now. Like part of the beauty of it is this sort of like crisp, calculated,
Very careful.
very careful, like even just registering things. That's why I can't handle like I love printmaking, but I'm not a printmaker by any means, because I don't like the work that it takes to do it properly. There's no
Yeah.
freestyling, you know.
Zero. All right. My next share is, so these two lovely pieces were sent to us in the mail recently by
They're
an
great.
in Toronto, Louise Flint, and I just, or sorry, Louise, and I, not only was it just like having our mailbox has been like essentially empty for the past like while. Like it's been like, oh, a bill, a newspaper that's like barely filled with information. And so to like, get something in the mail that is like handmade, and the letter is just like so kind and generous and thoughtful, and it was just like just such a positive thing to receive in the mail. And so I want to share it because that was just such a lovely experience. But also look at these prints, they're so dope.
The prints within the prints are so good.
Right? I love the like meta of it. The colors are so good. The like line work, like, you know, it's just like, it's got a like really playful zine comic vibe. But then also is like, when I opened it up, I was like, oh, I've never seen like a print where it's about printmaking.
It's so mad. And I'm like, I want to see more in this narrative series. Like, what's she working on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the work is really, this, I think, was like kind of a special project that was like a series of postcards that were being sent to just printmaking buddies.
Oh, yeah.
Which is like just awesome.
Yeah.
But then like the other work is like, I think still has some like printmaking references, but is like like explores more beyond just that, but does, you know, I think like the comic book vibe and the like the half tones and the like boldness
Yeah.
it's seen in other work as well. And yeah, I just like, I don't know, I really love when like art just makes you feel good and like it makes you smile. And also like I think it like makes me appreciate like things that we do. I'm like, oh yeah. I don't know, it's like I like totally see myself in this.
You feel represented by this character.
Yeah, I do. I really do. I'm like, this yeah, like this like standing on a box down here, literally.
That's funny.
Because I'm too short for our tables if I'm having to pull like a big screen.
Yeah.
Like I don't have the upper body strength if I'm standing flat on the floor to like execute it well. So I have to stand on a box so that I can like have the right pressure by like bending over to make it. So I'm like, oh my gosh, 100% this.
Yeah. It's printmaking for printmakers. This is
like, yeah, I was just like very grateful. So like just felt really like loved, and also the work is great. So just all around such a win. Like
Also, pandemic mail, just a way of connecting in the midst of all
Yeah,
this is such a nice sentiment. And I love all the different, like, sort of treatments of line, like in the drawing behind her on the black
yeah.
wall, the floor texture. It's really cool. It's a
It's
lot
just
of
so,
information and in a
yeah,
very nice way.
it is. And only two colors, you
Yeah,
know? That's the power of line right there. You can
yeah,
feel space and depth and complexity, and it's just like one, two,
yeah.
two. So yeah, I just like I really loved them, and I just like we were both so like grateful for receiving them, and
Oh,
yeah, and I think they're done at Open Studio, like so you know shout out Open Studio, and yeah, so nice like Canadian printmaker.
amazing.
Yeah, that was our second chair.
Okay. I guess I did bring three plus my own, so I do have one last share. And this is, again, just things that make me happy. And this is a Sydney Madia.
Oh my gosh.
So if you have to look up her work at the end of this, because she does a lot of these. I mean, she's an illustrator. I think she graduated from OCAD, I want to say 2017 or 2018, maybe even 2019. I have no concept of time. I'm old and she's not. Um, like, I realize I've been out of school for so long now.
We
Like, time has really
we
passed.
don't have to talk about that.
No, but time really contracts. But she does all these like beautiful little ceramic creatures, like moments and very humorous scenes from nature. So I do have another piece of hers. See, the part of why I like these is that I can like support them in different ways throughout time, and it's not
Yeah.
nothing, but it's also something I can do, and not that they need me, but like this is something I get to have, like, and to
Yeah.
continue fueling that want to, collect. So this one also sits on a high shelf, unfortunately. But look, it's a
Like
little caterpillar holding a gorgeous flower. Like, how can you feel sad? Like, it's
no.
just a little, yeah. So I have another one that's like a Dalmatian peeing, and I have it in a snake plant. So yeah, she just has these different like kind of animal characters and doing kind of mundane things. She has a whole frog series. It's just so nice, and they're just so
Yeah, it feels
detailed at the
like
same time. Like,
seeing you hold it, like it's like, oh, I want to feel what that feels like
and it's got
because
like
it
a
probably
nice weight. And it's
yeah,
precious. It's like not exactly a toy. I would never give this to my son, but it is a toy for me and an object of joy.
that is
So,
awesome. Yeah, I'll get all of the names from you so that
yeah.
we make sure I like we share out all the like people we're talking about. Because like that's like a big part of what this was for Kyle and I is that you know we have had um you know we've been very fortunate to create a space where we get to celebrate people that we you know are really like proud and passionate and excited about what they're doing. Not proud and like we feel any like we're not proud like parents are proud. We're just like, yeah, people are like, look at these people that are like committed to what they love and they're making things that are great and they are like, you know, saying what they think is important to say and we get to like, you know, give them a room and a little space for, you know, sometimes just a week and so that they know like, yeah, kind of like you're saying, like, I don't need they don't need me to
They
purchase
don't, no.
but it is just like, you know, that's been something that we really like love about Sparkbox. And so this has been like our way of kind of extending that where we can be like, let's just like celebrate. It doesn't have to be a gallery. It doesn't have to be a big public art event. It doesn't have to like, you know, it doesn't have to be something that's complicated or hard or difficult in this environment. It can be as simple as being like, look at this awesome little
Here's the thing that
ceramic
I'm excited
sculpture.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, like it is on exhibit in my home every day, and
Yeah.
I really love it.
Yeah. Or I'm just really excited to have an excuse to like take it out momentarily.
Yeah, exactly. So like my final share, and I know we keep doing this where we pick books and then it's like everything's backwards. But
Text, text.
this is a little zine by Kara Sievewright. Hopefully I said Kara's last name properly. It's Kara, not Kara. I'm like on fire with saying things wrong today. And Kara was a resident, I don't even remember exactly when, but it was a while ago.
I like that
And,
time.
yeah,
The past.
it was a time. But this little piece, it's the wrecked woman. And so I don't have a lot of information on how this particular piece was done. When she was here, she was working on screen print and everything was drawn, like it was all drawn with like pen and ink mostly, and then scanned or drawn directly onto acetate. And but this really has a feeling that these were like relief prints,
or like scratch board or something. Like
yeah, like, but
very cool.
like the exterior cover is definitely screen, like just by looking at it, it feels like screen. But the interior, I can't say for certain. They look like they're reliefs, but they also are just really kind of perfect in how they're printed. And I just, the time that would go into printing each block like this for a book, totally possible. I'm not sure. And I did look it up, but the post for it on the website did not say the process, or if it did, I did not see it. But like, yeah, so it's about this woman who jumps into the ocean and sort of just stops at the bottom, and it's kind of like a hopeless feeling here at the bottom of the ocean. And then, you know, it gets really like sad in this moment, as you can tell by the imagery. And it's like very poetic, and a lot of Kara's work is poetic, but also deeply rooted in like themes of like social justice and teaching and thinking about history. But then an anchor is thrown down with a rope, and she pulls herself like free from that experience and up to the surface, where like she finds like a boat, and she rows away. But yeah, like this is the kind of, I forget what this is called. There's a name for like the inside page of a book. But the whole, it wraps around to the other side, and it's printed on like a much thinner piece of paper. I love those kinds of considerations, like paper and how like it feels, and like that tactile shift from like one moment in the book to the content of the book, and then that like exit out, and then you're done. But yeah, I think that like her work is really great, and she also works with like as part of a collective that does a lot of like publishing that explores and exposes and encourages conversations about like oppression and history, and amplifying voices that aren't heard. The group, just because I want to make sure I say it, is Graphic History Collective. And it seems like predominantly it's like books or comics, but that her work extends into like printed pieces and things of that nature as well, like outside of that collective. And yeah, just like I think that it's nice when work is both like easy to receive, kind of like you were saying with like having a ceramic or like a piece that is small that's like this is like very easy to purchase, very easy to like have in your space, easy to support, but then
Yeah.
is also having a conversation that's very valuable and like important to the maker, but then as by extension the group that she's working with, important for like a collective voice to share stories and information. So yeah.
No, I love
So,
that.
yeah, it is really it's a very nice book, and it feels really nice too. It's hard to like showcase that on a camera, but like the paper quality is something that I'm always like interested in, and you know, like this is just like a wraparound, so like it's a handmade book that also has like a sleeve for
Yeah.
itself, which is like such a nice thought.
I mean, I see it as its own object that you kind of have to interact with and revisit from time to time. So it's really intimate in that way.
Yeah, we have a lot of zines, and like I feel like
Hmm.
because they do sort of sit on a shelf, like they just sit in our library, and they're all in like a little box because usually they're quite delicate and they don't stand up on their own, and the other books are bulky, and yeah, we had them out one time and they just got smashed about a lot, and so we put them all together into a box to keep them protected. So that means like it's really like such a conscious action to go and see them. So
Hmm.
it's been nice to like dive back into that box of zines and discover things that you forgot you had.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel the same about like even in trying to think of like, oh, what do I want to share? Like we do have quite a bit of art on our walls, but it's a different sort of, I guess, experience
Yeah.
for me, I guess.
No, I can see that for sure. Yeah, those are our three. And it was, we're getting close to the time where Instagram's gonna tell me that I have to stop talking.
Okay.
Uh, that's like, usually they'll give you a little warning sign, like, you only have so many minutes left. And then it just cuts you right off.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a
But
limit.
yeah, there
It's
is.
wild.
This has been like so nice. I'm so glad that you could come on and like have a chat and like talk about like what you're working on and share those beautiful works, and yeah, just big thank you for.
No, it was so nice connecting with you guys. I mean, we've seen you, like both Darren and I, throughout the years on our own, and I think I've been twice to Spark
Yeah,
Docs. Like it's,
we will be open again in
I
some
know.
capacity somehow,
And if we
and
ever make our way to the county, like
yeah,
we'll
we
see a distance
totally.
hello.
Exactly. You just let us know. We will step outside of our house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or go to park. I don't know.
I know.
Um,
Under like normal circumstances, I'm sure we would have seen you guys by now.
yeah.
But
But anyways, this was
yeah.
lovely, and have like the best weekend. And we'll talk soon. And thanks everybody for hanging in there and checking out the work and being with us. That was super nice as well.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Goodbye.